Today we're going to talk about naming polynomials. We're going to talk about some vocabulary that is used with polynomials as well as different ways that we can name them. So when we are looking at polynomials, there's a few things that we're going to be kind of focusing in on today. So first of all, we want to write polynomials in standard form. So that's this term right up here. Now, standard form means that when we have a polynomial, it's written from biggest exponent to smallest exponent. So, for example, if I have the terms, let's see, x to the third, 2x to the fifth, 3, and x, negative 5x squared. Now, if I want to take these terms and I want to write them in standard form, I'm going to start with the term with the biggest exponent. So that would be my 2x to the fifth. So that would come first, all right? And then done with that. So the next biggest exponent would be that x to the third. Since it's positive, I'm going to put a plus x to the third. And then the next biggest exponent is that negative 5x squared. So I have minus 5x squared. Now that has the negative out front because we had a minus or a negative out front of the term when we were given it. And then lastly is our 3. So this would be written in standard form because we're going from biggest to smallest exponent. Now, one thing to mention is that the exponents are what's on the variable that we're concerned about. Now, if you look at this 3, I want to zone in a little closer on what's happening with the 3. So the 3 is last. It's our constant because there is no variable on it. So since there's no variable, there's no exponent. But what really is happening is that we have a variable, but the exponent is 0. So anything to the 0 power is just 1. So we don't really need to write that. So that's why 3 is a constant. And that'll loop back in with when we talk about the namings by degree as well. So that's standard form, again, going from biggest to smallest exponent. Now, all of these things that we're talking about today are polynomials. So we have a variable, we have exponents, we have numbers, and we have some specific names that we're going to be using for some of these terms. So there's 2 different ways that we can name polynomials. First is by their number of terms. So number of terms just talks about the number of kind of chunks that we have in our equation or in our expression. So we have 3 specific names we use, and then everything that we're talking about today is classified as a polynomial. So even though we have specific names for 3 of these kinds, all of these are considered polynomials. So a monomial has 1 term. So right here we have like 5x, so that's just 1 term. Binomial has 2 terms, and the 2 terms here are 2x squared and 7. And our trinomial here has x to the third, negative 10x, and 1. So we have 3 terms, that makes it a trinomial. Now again, all of these are classified as polynomials as well. But if we get something like x to the fourth plus 3x to the third minus x squared minus 2, this is a polynomial, and that's what we would name it with. So when we talk about our namings, anything bigger than a trinomial, we just call polynomial. All right. Now the next thing is the degree. So the degree is the biggest exponent. So in my monomial here, my degree is 1 because that exponent on the x is 1. We don't see it. It's that invisible 1. Our degree for our binomial here is 2. That's the biggest exponent. The trinomial is 3. Our polynomial here, the degree is 4. If we zone back in on the example below, our degree here is 5. So judging by that degree, we name things accordingly. So a degree of 0, so like our example here, if we had just 3 as our polynomial, the degree would be 0, and we would call that a constant. If we have a degree of 1, it's a linear. 2 is quadratic. 3 is cubic. 4 is quartic. 5 is quintic, and anything 6 or greater, we just say to the 6th degree, 7th degree, 8th degree, and we keep going like that. So we have two different ways that we're going to be naming these, and we combine the names together. So if we look down here, we have our example that I put here. We have our degree of 5. So this is a quintic polynomial. All right, we have 4 terms, so that makes it a polynomial, quintic because it's to the 5th degree. So if we look back at these other examples up here, here for the monomial, we know it's a monomial, but it's a linear monomial because it's to the 1st degree. Our binomial here is quadratic because it's to the 2nd degree. So quadratic binomial. We have a cubic trinomial here. And then a quartic polynomial here. All right, so again, we name them both by the degree and the number of terms. So again, standard form, I just want to make sure we really understand this. Standard form is when our terms are written from biggest to smallest exponent. So this example right here is written in standard form. So we've talked about the degree, we've talked about the number of terms, but one thing we haven't talked about yet is the leading coefficient. So once your polynomial is written in standard form, the coefficient, or the number that's attached to that variable with the biggest degree, that's called our leading coefficient. So there are things in math that we'll do that you will need to know leading coefficient. It will make a difference in future math topics. So just know that the leading coefficient is the number that's attached to the variable with the biggest exponent. So again, down here, if I want to write this in standard form, I'm going to write it from biggest to smallest exponent. So I would start with this term here. So I'd have negative 3x to the 4th plus 7x to the 3rd plus 5x to the 2nd plus 2. So just a few details about this. My leading coefficient is negative 3. My degree is 4, so that would be quartic. And I have 1, 2, 3, 4 terms, so that would be considered a polynomial. So here's just some note sheets you can use to kind of quiz yourself on how we name things and some examples. So again, number of terms is one of the ways that we name our polynomials. So we have monomial, binomial, trinomial, and then 4 more we consider a polynomial. So by degree, again, we have constant, linear, quadratic, cubic, quartic, quintic, and 6 or more we say to the 6th degree, to the 7th degree, and so on. So what you're going to be doing for your homework is this page right here. And what I'm going to ask you to do is name each of these by the degree and number of terms, but also I want you to list the leading coefficient as well. Also, if it is not written in standard form, which I believe they are, so you won't need to worry about that. So again, you want to write the leading coefficient and then the name, and that's going to be in 2 pieces. So we name it by the degree and by the number of terms. All right, so that's what you're going to be doing for this worksheet.